Jesus is speaking. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing, but I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. I am giving you these commands so that you may love one another. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We're led to believe by things like movies, for example, that we ought to be prepared to give our most important messages to those we love when we ourselves are close to leaving this world. But in truth, the last words people utter can be as easily indecipherable as profound, or as easily defiant as filled with blessing. On his deathbed, Walt Disney whispered, "Kurt Russell." And no one, not even Kurt Russell, knows what he was talking about. When Joan Crawford's maid began to pray at her deathbed, the actress snapped, "Don't you dare ask God to help me." Lou Costello of Abbott and Costello fame said, "That was the best ice cream soda I've ever tasted." But sometimes real gems can come out of the mouths of those who are dying, words worth hanging on to. Thomas Edison said, "It is very beautiful over there." And George Harrison of the Beatles said, "Love one another," before he died. What would you say to your loved ones if you could sum up all the wisdom you had gleaned from years of living? You who love Joanna and who have traveled to be here to see this day on which she is welcomed into the household of faith, what words would you have for her? If you could crystallize everything that is important about life as you understand it, if you could give her all the deepest wisdom you have learned. In our scripture passage this morning, Jesus is doing this very thing. The Gospel of John shows us here a moment from his last hours when Jesus is with his nearest and dearest. It's after supper now, and he's speaking to the ones he calls his own. And in that moment, he gives them his final words, his most important knowledge, his rules for living and loving and being a part of the beloved community he has created. Jesus tells them, I am the vine, and my Father is the vine grower. And immediately we have an image of something green and growing, and something which, when the fruit ripens, will make something else even more wonderful and delightful. And we have an image, too, of someone tenderly caring for the vine, making sure it's planted in just the right soil and given the proper amount of water and the optimal amount of sun. Someone who prunes the branches to make sure they're healthy and strong and will produce the best of fruit. I am the vine, says Jesus, and you are the branches. Jesus is talking about the family tree of the family of God. Each of us is a product of a family. We are the product not only of the people who gave us birth or raised us, but of generation upon generation of people we never knew, whose influences live on in us. Think of the things you picked up from your parents, how to pronounce words, the inflections in your voice, your tendency to get extra loud or extra quiet when you're mad. Then realize that your parents picked those things up probably from their parents, and those parents picked them up from their parents, and so on down the generations. The traits of our families abide in us. For some of us, those things are things like blonde hair or brown eyes or long legs. Some of you. For others, they're things like quick wit around the dinner table or a heavy foot on the pedal on the highway, or the particular way we say goodnight. The people who brought us into the world or brought us up in the world, the people who nurtured us, the people who loved us and stayed up with us when we were sick and made sure we had our hats and gloves when we left the house. These things stay with us, the things they gave us. They abide in us. They become truly a part of who we are, just as truly as our fingerprints and our DNA. The people who love us into being leave a mark on us. And it's the same with the beloved community of faith. I am the vine, Jesus says, and you are the branches. And that means that what Jesus has and who and what Jesus is, he gives to us. He passes along to us, and it becomes a part of us. It abides in us. Jesus says, those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit. Joanna came into this world after abiding for a period of time, right about 9 months, in an environment that was intended to give her everything she needed to grow and thrive. To abide in Jesus is to have beautiful evidence of the nurturing environment of the true vine. Something wonderful, something life-giving is being passed on to us in him. Somewhere in Scripture, this is described, this fruit, as love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Fruits. Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you. Our culture tells us that love is a feeling. It's the jolt in your heart when you look at someone and realize she's the one. Or the melting feeling you get when the baby is placed in your arms. Or the joyful recognition when you see your brother or parent or best friend forever. That sense of homecoming you have with certain people in your life. But it is equally important for us to understand that when Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you, it is imperative that we look beyond this notion of love as a feeling. The love Jesus is referring to here is a decision. It is an action. Love one another here means be kind to one another. Help one another. When someone is hungry, give them food. When someone is thirsty, give them a drink. When they are strangers, welcome them. When they are naked, clothe them. When they are lonely or sick, care for them. Visit them. The entire laundry list outlined by Jesus elsewhere in the Gospels, plus one essential ingredient found only here, right here. There is no greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. There are many ways to lay down one's life. You lay down your life when you go without sleep to stay up with a sick child. You lay down your life when you choose forgiveness over bitterness and hate. You lay down your life when you go not halfway, but all the way with self-giving. Love one another as I have loved you. Jesus says, you didn't choose me, I chose you. Our faith tells us that, yes, even though Tracy and Kevin made a conscious decision to bring all three of their wonderful daughters to this place, to have them welcomed into the household of faith through the sacrament of baptism, the deeper truth is that all of this is part of a beautiful design put in place by God long, long ago. God chose Joanna Marie to enter into this beloved community just as surely as Jesus called out to Simon and said, I will call you Peter. God chose Joanna and Juliet and Jocelyn to be grafted onto the vine that is Jesus' life. Just as God chose them for the Adams and Belinda families and for this place and time, the UPC church family. God committed us all into one another's care. The words from today's gospel are among Jesus' final words of wisdom for those he loves and calls his own. He calls on each of us to love and protect and care for those who are our own. What words of wisdom do you have for one another? What is the deepest and most heartfelt learning that you treasure, that you would pass along to someone, maybe not on your deathbed, maybe sooner, maybe now, today? The one we call the vine, the one who encourages us to abide in and with him, tells us to love one another today. We all start here with the gift of love from the God whose name is love. Thanks be to God.